My name is Marissa Carter, 31, and I've spent my whole life proving I could stand on my own. Tonight, I thought I was just attending my brother's birthday party until my parents decided to make a show out of me. The ballroom lights hit my face as my father tapped the microphone. Before we toast, he said, smiling at the crowd, "There's one more surprise. My daughter will be giving her brother the keys to her penthouse so he can start fresh." Laughter, applause, glasses clinking. I froze. The keys he was talking about were sitting in my purse, my apartment, my name on every payment, every late night of work. "I never agreed to that," I said. My voice carried through the music. My father's smile stiffened. My mother leaned toward me, whispering through her teeth, "Don't ruin this moment. Hand him the keys." "No." I stood up, calm but shaking inside. "I earned that place. You don't get to give it away." The music stopped. The room went silent. My mother's hand moved faster than my thoughts. The slap echoed, my glasses hit the floor. For a second, all I heard was my own heartbeat. I bent down, picked up the frame, straightened it with trembling fingers, and looked at her. "Enjoy the party," I said, then turned and walked out. Outside, the air felt colder than I expected. I unlocked my phone, scrolled past every contact, and stopped at one name. My thumb hovered, then pressed call. "They crossed the line this time," I said. 15 minutes later, a car pulled up. A man stepped inside the ballroom and said, "You have 3 minutes. If your parents tried to take away what you worked so hard to build, would you suffer in silence or act like me? Comment below and let me know what you think." The music played smooth jazz, just loud enough to blur small talk. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, and every few seconds someone laughed too hard at a joke they didn't really hear. The resort's banquet hall glittered with reflections from silver and gold balls, making the room glow in faux luxury. Colton stood in the center, tall, confident, the perfect image of charm. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. People surrounded him like he was a magnet, neighbors, family, friends, even our parents' business partners. "You've done so well, Colton," they said over and over. "Your parents must be so proud." I stayed near the bar, pretending to sip water, watching him take the praise that used to sting when we were kids. Back then, I brought home good grades. He brought home trouble. But still, Mom would smile at him like he hung the moon. Colton got praise. I got silence. I used to think that was just how families worked, one child shining brighter, the other fading into the background. But as I grew older, I realized Mom didn't just favor him. She depended on him to look perfect. Every family dinner was another stage. Every success of mine was met with, "Well, your brother's working on something big, too." Tonight felt no different. When Mom walked by with a glass of wine, she leaned in. "You look nice, Marissa. Maybe tonight you'll meet someone." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a reminder. In her world, a woman's worth was measured by the man next to her. Dad joined a small group near the buffet. His voice carried easily. "Family comes first," he said, shaking hands, smiling like a man whose words had weight. He always said that phrase as if it excused everything. I wondered if he even remembered what it felt like to mean it. A couple of relatives waved me over, asking about work, about the penthouse. "You must be doing well for yourself," one said, eyes flicking with polite envy. I gave a small smile, the kind that says everything and nothing at the same time. "I'm managing," I said. The air in the room felt heavy, too warm, too polished, too rehearsed. Colton laughed across the room, the sound sharp and effortless. He clinked glasses with Dad, and I caught a strange glance pass between them. Quick, intentional. Something inside me shifted. I didn't know why, but my stomach tightened. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition. The same feeling I got every time a family decision had already been made without me. I moved to the corner where the band played, letting the notes cover my thoughts. The singer's voice was low, sultry, but even she sounded distant. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but under the glitter something was cracking. Mom's laughter echoed from the next table light and rehearsed. Dad stood straighter than usual, hands behind his back, scanning the room, as if preparing for a speech. Even Colton stopped talking for a moment, checking his reflection in a silver tray. Then the band started to fade, one instrument at a time. The conversations dimmed. My father cleared his throat and took the microphone. The storm was about to begin. The microphone squealed for a brief second, pulling every eye to the front. My father stood tall beneath the chandelier, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of champagne. The music had stopped completely. Only the low hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. "Thank you all for coming tonight." He began, smiling like a man hosting a charity gala. "It's been a challenging year for our family, but tonight is about new beginnings, especially for my son Colton." Applause broke out across the room. Colton raised his glass, wearing the look of someone trying to appear humble. I forced a thin smile, waiting for my father to finish the speech he'd clearly rehearsed. "And one more thing," he continued, voice warm but heavy with pride. "My daughter Marissa has decided to gift her brother the downtown penthouse so he can start fresh." For a moment I thought I'd misheard. The words hung in the air. People turned toward me, faces lighting up with admiration that wasn't mine to claim. "She's always been so generous," someone whispered. My hand tightened around the glass. I set it down slowly and stood. "I never agreed to that." My voice was flat but clear. A few guests shifted uneasily. My father's smile froze, his hand still gripping the mic. "Of course you did," he said lightly. "We talked about how Colton needs stability. You said you wanted to help." I shook my head. "That's not what I said." Murmurs rippled through the room. The fizz of champagne sounded louder than the whispers. My mother moved quickly toward me, her heels striking the marble floor with sharp precision. "Marissa," she said softly, though her grip on my arm was firm. "Don't make a scene. This is family business." "I'm not making a scene," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I'm just telling the truth." She leaned in, her familiar perfume surrounding me. "Don't embarrass your father. Family means helping one another." "Helping?" I repeated. "By taking what's mine." A man near the buffet coughed. Someone else pretended to check their phone. The silence sharpened. My father's tone rose, still polite enough for the crowd. "You've done well for yourself, Marissa. It's time to give back. Colton's had a rough time lately. You can afford to be generous." Colton lowered his gaze, feigning discomfort, but I caught the faint smirk he tried to hide behind his glass. Heat rose in my chest. Not anger, but something colder. Everyone waited for me to stay quiet. "Would you?" The question flickered in my head like static. Every eye in the room was on me, waiting for the dutiful daughter to nod, smile, and hand over the keys gracefully. My mother's nails pressed into my wrist. "Do this for the family," she whispered. I pulled my arm free. The motion was small, but final. My voice came out, even almost detached. "No," I said. "I earned that home." The words didn't sound defiant. They sounded like fact. My father's face went pale, then stiffened. Murmurs spread, sharp breaths, a few hesitant claps that died halfway. The chandelier above flickered once before steadying its light, catching the tension that filled every inch of the room. No one spoke. No one moved. In that instant, the whole room seemed to stop breathing. My mother stepped closer, each step heavy with restraint. Her voice trembled, not from emotion but from anger barely contained. "You owe us everything," she said, each word sharp as a blade. The sound sliced through the air and something in my chest tightened. I met her gaze, steady and low. "If love comes with conditions, it isn't love at all." The sentence fell softly, yet it hit like a stone sinking through water. A few guests lowered their eyes, pretending to study their champagne. My father's jaw locked. Light from the chandelier caught on his cufflinks, flashing cold and metallic like fury disguised as elegance. My mother's lips quivered. Everything you have, your degree, your job, that apartment comes from us. From your father's sacrifices. From this family. I kept my eyes on her, my tone even calm. If you really want me to repay you, then let me do it my own way, not by giving up everything I fought so hard to earn. Something inside her broke. I saw it before it happened. The flicker in her eyes, the tremor in her hand, before it rose. The slap came fast, clean, echoing across marble and glass. The sound froze the room. Champagne stopped mid-pour. Voices died mid-breath. The jazz band lowered their instruments in silence. My cheek burned. My glasses slid from my face, one lens shattering as they hit the floor. For a moment no one moved. The only sound was the faint clink of a spoon falling into an empty glass somewhere in the back. My father's voice came low, tense. Linda. But she didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on me, chest-heaving, lipstick trembling at the corners. "You're ungrateful," she whispered, "after everything we've done for you." Across the room, Colton stood still, eyes darting between us. His shoulders were stiff, his hand half raised as if he might intervene, but he didn't. He looked down into his drink. That silence said everything. I bent down, picked up the broken frame of my glasses and straightened them with trembling fingers. I could still see through one lens, the other fractured the light into warped ribbons like the reflection of a life already breaking apart. I put them back on and looked at her. My voice was soft, almost kind. "Enjoy the party." For a heartbeat I thought she might answer, but she didn't. My father turned toward the guests, forcing a stiff smile, trying to patch the cracks in the evening's illusion. The band exchanged uneasy glances, waiting for a cue that never came. I turned and walked toward the door. The click of my heels on the marble was the only sound left in the room. No one stopped me. Not Colton. Not my parents. Not a single person who had applauded the generosity I never offered. The heavy doors closed behind me, sealing off the noise. Outside, the desert air hit my face, cool, sharp, clean. Las Vegas stretched before me, neon lights scattering across the glass doors refracted through the cracks in my lens. I took a deep breath. For the first time that night, I could hear my own heartbeat, steady and real. Inside, behind those walls, I knew the whispers had already started, words like drama, embarrassment, family disgrace. Let them talk. They always had. The wind caught the edge of my dress as I stepped off the marble path and onto the street. A line of taxis glowed in the distance. I didn't look back. The party went on, just not with me. The night air bit at my skin as I stepped into the parking lot. The glow from the resort lights painted long shadows across the empty cars. I sank onto the low stone ledge by the fountain, my breath visible in the desert chill. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone. On the screen, one name waited like a promise. Grandpa Charles. For a moment I hesitated. My reflection in the cracked lens of my glasses looked unfamiliar. Half of me, fractured. Half of me still standing. Then I pressed call. He picked up after the first ring. His voice was deep, controlled, the kind that carried power even through static. "It happened again," I said. There was silence. Then the faint exhale I knew too well. "Stay where you are." The line went dead. I didn't move. The wind brushed against the hem of my dress and the sound of laughter from the ballroom drifted faintly through the glass doors. Inside, they were pretending everything was fine, music, smiles, champagne over spilled truth. I wrapped my arms around myself and waited. 15 minutes later, headlights swept across the lot. A black Bentley stopped in front of the resort entrance. The driver stepped out first, then opened the rear door. Grandpa Charles emerged. Even at 72, he carried the kind of presence that made people straighten their backs without realizing it. A gray suit, perfectly pressed. A cane he didn't need but carried like a symbol. His expression didn't waver as he spotted me sitting by the fountain. "Get up," he said quietly. It wasn't an order, it was inevitability. I stood. For the first time that night, I didn't feel small. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes scanning the faint mark on my cheek, the tremor in my hand. His voice softened, but only slightly. You don't have to explain. I already know. Then he turned toward the doors and started walking. I followed him, the echo of his cane tapping against the marble steps cutting through the night. When he entered the lobby, the concierge froze mid-sentence. Even the valet straightened his uniform. He moved like someone who owned every room he entered. And in most cases, he did. The ballroom doors swung open just as the band tried to start playing again. The music died instantly. Heads turned. Conversations fractured into silence. Grandpa Charles walked in his cane, striking the floor once, twice before he stopped in the center of the room. My parents stood near the stage, my mother pale, my father stiff. Colton hovered behind them, his glass still in hand, eyes wide. The old man didn't glance at anyone else. His gaze locked on my father. You have 3 minutes, he said, voice low but carrying across the room, to explain what you've done to my granddaughter. No one spoke. My mother's lips parted, then closed again. My father's composure cracked for the first time that night. Around them, the guests froze, unsure whether to sit or stand. The chandeliers above trembled faintly from the air conditioning, scattering light over faces turned pale. Colton shifted uncomfortably, lowering his drink. Someone near the back whispered, "That's Charles Whitmore," and the name rippled through the crowd like static, half awe, half fear. Grandpa Charles stood unmoving. His shadow stretched long across the marble, touching the stage where my father stood. The silence deepened until it felt physical, pressing against the walls. 3 minutes had never felt so long. No one dared breathe. The entire ballroom fell silent, every gaze fixed on him. The silence stretched until it felt like gravity itself. Then Richard, my father, tried to find his voice again. "Charles," he began, his tone forced into calm. "This is just a misunderstanding. Marissa." She overreacted. "We were only trying to." Grandpa Charles raised a hand, and the room froze once more. "I warned you once," he said, his voice measured and cold. "You do not humiliate family in front of strangers." The words fell like a verdict. My father swallowed, hard color draining from his face. Charles took a slow step forward, the sound of his cane echoing across the marble. "It seems you've forgotten our last conversation. I told you if you ever let greed outweigh decency again, I'd make sure you paid for it." "Elaine." My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling with desperation. "Please, Charles, you don't understand." Richard was only enough. He interrupted, never raising his tone. "Don't mistake silence for weakness." The line sliced through her plea like a blade. She froze, lowering her head. Charles turned back to my father. "You've built your life on borrowed ground. Every deal, every contract, every so-called success, signed off by me." He tapped his cane once against the floor. "I own the foundation your company stands on." A murmur rippled through the crowd. My father opened his mouth, but no words came. Charles continued, each word deliberate and heavy. "As of this moment, I am withdrawing all financial support. Every share, every loan, every guarantee terminated." Richard's breath caught. "You can't." "I already did." The guests exchanged uneasy glances. A few quietly set down their glasses. From somewhere near the back, a woman whispered, "He's the investor," and the realization spread like wildfire. My mother tried once more, her voice cracking under panic. "Charles, think of the family of the company. You'll destroy everything we've built." He turned to her slowly. "No, Elaine. You destroyed it yourself the moment you forgot what family truly means." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small set of car keys, and placed them on the nearest table. The metallic clink against the glass cut through the silence. "Let's see how far you go without my name." No one spoke. My father stood still, his hand gripping the microphone he no longer had a reason to hold. Then Grandpa Charles gestured to his driver. The man stepped forward, handed him a sealed envelope. Charles took it, then passed it directly to me. This, he said, his gaze unwavering, contains everything you'll need. The penthouse, the assets. Everything is now under your name, signed and secured. For a moment I couldn't move. The envelope felt heavier than paper should its edges sharp against my fingers. He leaned closer, his voice low, meant only for me. "Let's go home." I nodded once. As we turned to leave, the room remained frozen. My father's shoulders collapsed as if the air had been pulled out of him. My mother's face cracked, shock, regret, and fear blending together. Colton didn't lift his head. Grandpa Charles walked ahead of me, his pace slow and steady. Each tap of his cane against the marble sounded like the closing stroke of a judgment. When the doors shut behind us, the silence left in that ballroom wasn't just quiet, it was the sound of power changing hands. Morning light bled through the blinds like an accusation. By then, the video had already spread everywhere. Someone at the party had recorded the slap, the sound, the silence after, and uploaded it. In less than 24 hours, millions had seen it. Headlines twisted it into spectacle. Socialite strikes daughter in front of guests. Whitmore family scandal at Las Vegas gala. Clips looped across every platform. The slap. My mother's trembling hand. My expression still and calm, as if the world had frozen in place. People argued in the comments, some with outrage, others with cruel fascination. No one deserves that. You can see she's terrified. Rich people destroying their own. By the end of the week, the fallout began. My father, Richard Kukul, lost 3 major contracts in 48 hours. The board cited reputational concerns. His phone stopped ringing. The same investors who used to laugh too loudly at his jokes now avoided his calls. Elaine. My mother was quietly removed from her social committees. The Women's League issued a statement about upholding standards of conduct. She stopped attending brunches. Photos of her once perfect smile were replaced with blurry paparazzi shots, head-down glasses on, pretending not to hear the questions. And Colton. The Golden Sun found his position terminated due to restructuring. His company didn't say it outright, but everyone knew why. No one wanted a Whitmore near their brand. I didn't comment. I didn't post. I didn't answer messages. News anchors debated morality on morning shows. Commentators used words like justice abuse and family trauma. Some called me brave, others called me cruel. Maybe they deserved it, one voiceover said on a viral compilation. Or maybe it was too much. What do you think? That line stayed with me not as accusation, but as echo. Maybe there was no right answer. I turned off my phone. Days passed quietly after that. I spent mornings on the balcony of the penthouse where sunlight touched every corner like forgiveness. There were no photographers, no staged smiles, no noise, just air and space, and the slow process of remembering how to breathe. Grandpa Charles handled everything with surgical precision. The Whitmore holdings were restructured. My name was kept out of the papers as much as possible. When I finally asked him why he cared so much, he only said, "Because someone had to." He kept his word. 1 month later, I opened my own design studio downtown, a modest space with high ceilings and unfinished wood. It smelled of paint, paper, and something new. Charles came on the first day, leaned on his cane, and looked around with quiet approval. "Furniture," I said, showing him a stack of sketches. "Functional, handmade, simple." He nodded once. "Build something that lasts. Not like what they did." So I did. We hired 3 craftsmen, then 5. Clients came slowly, then steadily. The first piece I sold was a walnut desk, solid, balanced, nothing flashy. When I ran my hand along its surface, I felt something settle in me. At night, I sometimes scrolled past articles about my family. The stories had faded, replaced by newer scandals. Their faces looked smaller on the screen now, like strangers caught in someone else's tragedy. I didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on creation. Maybe that's what power really means. Not the noise of control, but the quiet of choice. I closed my laptop and turned off the lights. Outside Las Vegas shimmered like it always had, loud, relentless pretending to forget. Inside I learned how to live without pretending. 3 months had passed since everything unraveled, and Las Vegas had returned to its usual rhythm, bright, impatient, pretending to forget. Inside the penthouse the morning was still. The kind of stillness that didn't ask for silence, only peace. Steam curled from a cup of coffee on the marble counter. Sunlight drew long lines across the floor, warm and clean. I had rearranged the space since moving back. The heavy paintings were gone. The gold frames, the velvet drapes replaced by pale walls and air. My own furniture filled the rooms now, a maple table, a linen sofa, a chair with edges just imperfect enough to feel human. The phone buzzed on the counter. "Grandpa Charles," I answered, leaning against the counter. "Morning," I said. His voice came through steady as ever. "Are you okay now?" For a moment I didn't speak. The question was simple, but it carried everything: grief, love, and the weight of survival. Finally I said. This time I didn't stay silent. There was a pause. Then the faint sound of him exhaling. "Good," he said softly. "That's all I ever wanted." The call ended, but the quiet remained comfortable, not hollow. I looked around the apartment, tracing the details that once didn't belong to me. Now they did. Not because someone gave them, but because I chose to keep them. The city hummed beyond the glass neon against daylight. Somewhere out there my family still existed, fractured, distant, perhaps angry. I didn't wish them harm. I just didn't wish to return. Forgiveness, I'd realized, wasn't the same as forgetting. It was choosing to stop carrying the fire. At the studio, work had begun to bloom. Orders filled the calendar. Clients came not because of a last name, but because of design, craft, patience. My hands found rhythm again, the grain of wood, the weight of balance, the sound of tools meeting purpose. Creation had become its own kind of language, a quiet conversation between what I'd lost and what I'd chosen to build. Sometimes late at night I'd think about that night in the ballroom, not the slap, not the shame, but the moment afterward when everything stopped pretending. Maybe that was the true beginning, not the end. People still debated online. Some said justice had been served. Others called it cruelty disguised as truth. I stopped reading long ago. Maybe both sides were right. Maybe neither. The world loves conclusions, but life rarely gives them. I learned something simpler. Family isn't about control. It's about respect. Love without freedom is only ownership, and silence, no matter how polished, is still surrender. I learned that the hard way. Now my mornings belong to me. I wake before dawn, make coffee, open the balcony doors, and watch the city blur into gold. The world keeps moving, and I let it. There's no soundtrack, no audience, no redemption arc. Just continuity. Just life. The table in front of me still bears a small scar from when I dropped a chisel. I never sanded it down. It reminds me that even beauty can survive imperfection, that maybe it must. Outside, the first light catches on the windows of distant towers. Inside, I sit in the quiet and breathe. No anger, no fear, no need to prove anything anymore. Only the sound of morning and the quiet truth that I am finally my own. Mota, in a world where family secrets, betrayal, and power struggles collide, Marissa Carter finds herself at the center of a twisted drama. Forced to confront her family's cruel expectations and the harsh truths of her own life, Marissa must decide whether to silently comply or fight for her independence. From a public humiliation at a lavish gala to a life altering decision that shakes her family's foundation, her journey is a raw exploration of control, revenge, and self discovery. Is family loyalty worth the price of your happiness? Or is there power in choosing your self revenge stories and family drama come to a head in this gripping tale of personal redemption and the high stakes of family revenge?